5 minutes on the Republican side.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I think it'd be a good idea that we create a national warning system to tell Americans when we decide we need to do something, even if it's wrong. A few weeks ago, we decided we needed to do something about immigration. A few of the senators announced on a Thursday that we had reached this delicate compromise and nothing could be changed from this bill. We all found out a few days later that the bill had not been written yet. But over the weekend, one version was written, and by Monday, another version had been written. And we were told we needed to vote on that by Friday. This bill has been a moving target since it began. It's hard to tell on any given day what is actually in the bill. We were able to convince our leadership to at least go to a second week, but when many of us came down to offer our amendments, consistently there was objection to bringing up additional amendments. When finally the original bill came to its final day, there were 3 cloture votes that failed. This bill was put down. But now we've brought it back. We brought back a bill just yesterday, a new bill that we've already found significant flaws in, that the writers didn't know was there. We've got problems in the underlying bill, and yesterday we were all waiting down on the floor to get this new amendment. This amendment that is almost as big as the original bill, 373 pages. We were all waiting and we received it later in the afternoon. What actually happened is when we asked that the amendment be read, we had to recess the Senate and go finish writing the bill. But we finally got the bill. It was warm from the copier, 373 pages, after a couple of hours of delay. And when we asked that it be read so we would understand that was in it, we finally got the majority leadership to agree that we could have the night to review it, which we greatly appreciate. Now we've come to the floor here. We got here at 10 today because we understood that the majority leader was going to divide this in this grand clay pigeon procedure to divide this amendment, only to find out that the amendment is being changed, but it hadn't been written. And we're waiting here on the floor again to get a new version of this amendment, but we don't know what's going to be in it. You know, it's amazing that something so important that has been talked about on the floor of the Senate is something that we have to do is continuously being revised and rewritten every day. And instead of stopping and getting this thing in some form that we can work with, we continue to press the whole process forward. You know, some of us who are critics have been called obstructionists because we really don't think this process is fair or that the underlying bill is right for America. We've been called a lot of names. But we can't even get started with a fair process, and we can't start to fix it with amendments if we don't even have it written yet. It's hard to know what the amendments should even be if you don't see what's actually in the bill. So here we are again. It's going to be offered sight unseen, just like yesterday, where not one member of this Senate had read it when it was offered. We're going to get a new amendment, probably 400 pages today, that not one member of the Senate will have read, that we will be expected to bring up and to vote on. Mr. President, I'd like to ask a couple of unanimous consent requests. First, I'd like to we need to stop this moving target and know what we're working with. And I ask unanimous consent that it be in order at this time to order the yeas and nays on the pending amendment.
I object, Mr. President.
Is there objection?
Objection.
The objection is heard.
Well, then maybe it would be fair to ask unanimous consent that after Senator Reid modifies the amendment, that the modification be read.
Is that a...
I object, Mr. President.
Is that a request for unanimous consent?
That's a unanimous consent request.
Is there objection?
I object.
The objection is heard.
It's extraordinary that we're using Senate procedures to actually keep a 400-page amendment from being read. I ask unanimous consent that when the amendment is modified, when it's broken into these clay pigeon pieces, that I be recognized to request the yeas and nays on that amendment.
Object.
Is there objection? Objection is heard.
I'm asking for votes. I'm asking for votes. Let's not say later on we're trying to stop votes. I'd also like to ask unanimous consent that when the Senate resume consideration of the bill, that the pending amendment be temporarily set aside and that all the filed amendments be called up in block, and that the Senate then return to the consideration of the Reed amendment.
Is there objection?
Objection.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, what I've done in these requests is to show that there is no intent to let this body actually see what we're voting on, which is incredible with such a complex bill, that we're going to bring up an amendment that we haven't read. When we ask that it be read, that request is denied. When we ask for a vote on the underlying amendment, that is denied. When we ask for the yeas and nays, which means you can't voice it, that means eventually we're going to get a vote on the amendment that will be offered today, that is denied. So, Mr. President, I want to make it clear that those of us who don't think this process is fair or that this bill is good for this country, that we have not wanted it to be voted on. But what the intent is for these to be modified, like they have been throughout this process. All these 26 some odd amendments will be modified minute by minute, hour by hour, so when we come to vote on these, that none of us are actually going to know what's in it. And I've heard members say, well, it's just like we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. But we found out this morning when we asked questions about the new amendment that it wasn't just like we were talking about a few weeks ago. In fact, there were some important amendments that were passed that we were told would be in this bill, which have been eliminated by the amendments that have been offered. And we can talk more about that as the process goes forward. But right now I'd like to reserve the balance of my time and yield to Senator Vitter.
Mr. President.